COVID-19 comes roaring back. America grapples with the Delta variant. Hi there, I'm Jeff in Chicago. JR is here too. This is lesson 390 of Plain English. The full lesson is available at plainenglish.com/390. Plain English, as you know by now, is your best way to upgrade your English using current events and trending topics. It's not good news today, I'm afraid. The new coronavirus mutation, the Delta variant, is sweeping through the United States just when we thought we were out of the woods. Just when we thought the danger was over. And that, by the way, is today's expression, out of the woods. We have a quote of the week in the second half of the audio lesson. Today's video lesson is about a unique way of expressing disappointment. So check that out at plainenglish.com/390. But for now, we'll dive straight into the audio lesson. For a moment, it seemed like we were out of the woods. Coronavirus infections were plummeting and vaccination rates rising. Big cities, which had the strictest social distancing mandates, started rolling back their rules. But then the Delta variant of SARS-CoV-2, the coronavirus that causes COVID-19, began infecting populations even with high rates of vaccination, changing the landscape 18 months into the fight against this new disease. Viruses adapt and evolve over time. They have the same basic characteristics, but the different mutations can act differently. The World Health Organization classifies and names coronavirus variants by Greek alphabet letter so that the Alpha variant was the first identified in Britain, Beta in South Africa, Gamma in Brazil, and Delta in India. This is the variant that is now tearing through the United States. The American Centers for Disease Control, or CDC, published a report showing that this new variant spreads much faster than the initial virus and the first identified variants. It's also more intense. A patient's viral load is a measure of how much virus is in that patient. It's a measure of intensity. The higher the viral load, the more of the virus a person has inside their body. The higher the viral load, the more of the virus a person has inside their body, which is bad news for them. But a person with a high viral load will also shed more of the virus, meaning that others are more likely to catch it, which is bad news for the rest of us. Plus, patients that catch the Delta variant will have higher viral loads than patients with earlier versions of the virus. And not just a little more either. The Delta variant has 1,000 times more of the virus than previous variants. Think about that. 1,000 times more of a deadly virus that we know very little about in terms of the long-term effects, including the syndrome known as long COVID. So the higher viral load means it spreads much faster. Some researchers compare it to Ebola, chickenpox, or the common cold, which are some of the fastest spreading diseases we've seen. This is the variant that ripped through India, overwhelming the country's healthcare system earlier this year. It is now the dominant strain in the U.S. At the beginning of July, here in America, about half of all sequenced positive coronavirus tests were the Delta variant, about half. By the end of the month, it was 83%. The data shows that it's far, far worse in population centers that have low rates of vaccination. At the end of July, for example, only about half of America's population was fully vaccinated, despite the widespread availability of the vaccine. But some states have vaccination rates as low as 1/3 of the community, and pockets of those states have vaccination rates even lower. As a result, people in those areas are much more susceptible to the disease. And hospitals in some states are already at capacity. They're reliving the nightmare of the original wave in 2020 before we had a vaccine. Mind you, vaccines provide good, but not perfect, protection against Delta. A breakthrough case is an example of a fully vaccinated person catching COVID-19. There were always going to be cases of vaccinated people getting the disease. That is the simple truth of vaccines. But the Delta variant has led to more breakthrough cases than first anticipated, including among high-profile individuals like Olympic athletes and members of the White House staff. A vaccinated person that catches the Delta variant initially has much milder symptoms than an unvaccinated person would have. And the vaccines are 96% effective at preventing hospitalizations, so they remain the best tool for controlling the impact of the virus. But they are not the miracle cure some people had hoped and expected them to be. For example, a vaccinated person may catch COVID in a breakthrough case, exhibit no symptoms, but still unknowingly spread the disease to others or suffer from COVID-related issues later in life. As a result, governments are now revising their guidance on mask wearing and social distancing, even for vaccinated people. Los Angeles reintroduced its indoor mask mandate in late July. New York is encouraging, but not requiring, people to wear masks indoors. Louisiana, which has been hard hit, reintroduced its indoor mask mandate even for vaccinated people. The CDC recommended indoor mask wearing for anyone in a COVID hotspot or near people who might be vulnerable to the disease. However, there is another danger in the mix, and that is public perception. The new advice may give an exhausted public whiplash. After being reassured of the vaccine's effectiveness, and after taking off masks in time for summer here in the Northern Hemisphere, now vaccinated people are being told that they can still catch COVID and spread the virus to others. So public health leaders must walk a tightrope of following scientific evidence as it changes, but also maintain confidence in their recommendations to the public. Every time they backtrack on advice, they risk losing confidence in the eyes of a public that is very particular about their freedoms and what they choose to do with their body, even when it comes to a simple mask or a shot. But the severity of Delta, especially in areas with low vaccination rates, is starting to change some minds. A popular radio talk show host who had been skeptical of vaccination was hospitalized with COVID-19. His family is now urging his listeners to get the shot. A lot of people who are hospitalized with COVID-19 were against vaccination before and have since changed their tune, urging friends and family to learn from their example. And more political leaders who once took pleasure in resisting the vaccine are now rolling up their sleeves and encouraging their followers to do the same. This is such a reminder of how short-sighted the rich world's vaccination policy has been compared to that of the developing world. There is no better investment that richer countries could make than in giving vaccines to everyone in the world, no matter who they are or where they live. And if a virus spreads anywhere, it has a chance to mutate and infect everyone, regardless of where they live. So the rich world can't insulate itself and say, we got this, we're vaccinated, good luck to everyone else, because the virus will change and adapt, and it will puncture the protection of any current vaccine. So there is no better way to spend $1 in 2021 than on vaccinating any person who wants the shot. Europe, Britain, and America say all the right words about this, but they aren't putting the muscle behind the current global vaccination program. I hope they do so soon, or we'll have more and more variants to deal with, and we'll go through all 24 letters in the Greek alphabet. Today's English expression is to be out of the woods. We say this when we have reached the end of a painful ordeal. We most often use this when talking about risks to our health or economic well-being. It's a funny little phrase. The woods are like the forest. So picture yourself wandering through the forest, hoping to escape to safety, and finally reaching a clearing where you can get help. That can help you remember this somewhat informal English expression. Right at the beginning of this lesson, I said that it seemed like we were out of the woods in May when America's Centers for Disease Control said vaccinated people didn't have to wear masks indoors. Where I live, Chicago, it's the third biggest city in the country. We were down to just a handful of daily cases. It seemed like we had reached the end of this painful experience. It seemed like we were out of the woods. But now, with new data on the Delta variant, it's clear that we are not out of the woods yet. And that's another popular way to use this expression, we are not out of the woods yet. That's a reminder that the risk, danger, or painful experience is not yet finished. Do you remember the lesson about the TV show Better Call Saul? I was concerned this week when the star of the show, Bob Odenkirk, collapsed while filming the 6th and final season of the show. He was rushed to the hospital and was unconscious when he got there. His family said he suffered a heart-related emergency. They didn't elaborate, but now he's awake and appears to be out of the woods. That means the danger appears to have passed. He's stable and getting better. Sure, he's still in the hospital, but the danger has passed and he's going to get better. He's out of the woods. You can use this phrase to describe an economy, an industry, or a business that's in danger. In the early wave of the pandemic, the American economy entered a recession. Depending on the measure you look at, it was the fastest recession to start and the fastest to end. All the latest data suggests that our economy is out of the woods and the biggest danger has passed. There are still reasons to be cautious, and still there are some people who need to regain their footing and get back to work. But overall, we're out of the woods. The biggest danger has passed. That's not true everywhere or for every business. I saw a quote from the boss of FEMSA, which owns the OXXO convenience stores in Mexico. He said that sales at his stores are rebounding, but they're not out of the woods yet. He's worried that people will not be out shopping at his stores if the Delta variant hits Mexico hard. So, in his opinion, his stores are not out of the woods. The big risk is still present. For 5 hours, 5 whole hours, Snapchat was unavailable to its users. That's a big deal. After 5 hours of work, the company fixed most of the issues, but they weren't out of the woods yet because many of their fans still had trouble accessing the app. Snapchat had to listen to feedback and publish instructions on how to manually delete and reinstall the app. So here's what happened. They fixed the big issue, but they weren't out of the woods yet because many of their users still couldn't access the app and were upset. Five hours without Snapchat. Can you imagine? Well, today's quote is from Edmund Burke, an Irish philosopher. He said, "I consider how little man is, yet in his own mind, how great. He is Lord and Master of all things, yet scarce can command anything." There's a little bit of antiquated English in there, but it means that people have an overinflated sense of their own powers. Basically, we all think we're kind of a big deal. How little man is, yet in his own mind, how great. Indeed, the world these days seems to be full of humbling experiences. So that's today's quote from Edmund Burke. "I consider how little man is, yet in his own mind, how great. He is Lord and Master of all things, yet scarce can command anything." All right, stay safe, everybody. Stay strong. This is terrible, but science is on our side. We can't fight the coronavirus here at Plain English, but we can hopefully give you something to look forward to and some way to take a step forward in your personal and professional development from the safety of your home or wherever you are. So that brings us to the end of lesson 390 here on Monday, August 16th, 2021. Remember, the full lesson is available online at plainenglish.com/390. We'll be back on Thursday. I was going to talk about the Tokyo Olympics on Thursday, but we'll save that for next week. I don't want to do 2 downers in a row. So I've got a fun one for you tomorrow. I'm going to talk about the oldest food brands in the United States. You won't believe how old some of these brands are. It'll be a fun, lighthearted lesson on Thursday, so don't miss it. See you then.